Hello beauties, how are you all doing? I hope you're doing amazing. My name is Shaz, short for Shahrazad, and I love colorful makeup. St. Patrick's Day is upon us. As you can see, I'm wearing some greens, particularly the eye look. And I want to talk to you about 14 palettes that I found in my collection that I think can be used for St. Patrick's Day. If all of that sounds good to you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Now let's go into the video. Okay beauties, before I get started, I do want to say I did this eye look with one of these palettes, and I will talk about the palette when I get to it. The second thing that I wanted to say is that not all of these palettes are monotone. Some are not. But the ones that gave me the green vibe, and I thought they can be used for making a mostly green look for St. Patrick's Day, I picked those. With the palettes I'm going to talk about, you're going to be able to create a variation of green color. These palettes are not all going to have St. Patrick's green, the exact St. Patrick's green, like shamrock green color. In fact, I think very few of them do. That color green is not a very common green to find inside palettes. Not that many people out there are going to feel comfortable putting that color green on their eyes. But the point of this video is to show you that you can still achieve some variation of a green look for St. Patrick's Day, regardless of your skin tone or regardless of how comfortable you are with certain types of greens, if you have one of these palettes in your collection. So let's get started. There's no ordering. It's not like a ranking or anything. It's just randomly selected. The first palette I want to talk about is this one. Yes, friends, this is inspired from Adept Cosmetics. This palette came out recently. I looked on Adept and it's sold out. I believe it might never come back, but I know some of you might have it in your collection, and I thought I should talk about it because as you can already see, it has a lot of green colors. I have done one green look with this palette. I will link it here for you all. It's kind of difficult to use this palette and not do a green look because the mattes are kind of all green or in the green zone. So yep, this is the first palette. The second palette, beauties, is this beauty. I got this beauty, which is called Creepy Crawley, in the mystery box from Unearthly Cosmetics for Halloween, this past Halloween. I don't know if the palettes from that mystery box are going to come back, but this quad is an absolutely gorgeous one, and this is one of those things that's very easy to just put in your purse and go on a trip with, or go, I don't know, if you even want to take it and use it to touch up your eye look in the middle of the day, you can also do that. But definitely a St. Patrick's palette, as you can see in the color story. I also wanted to mention, friends, that Unearthly Cosmetics does really beautiful covers. I've heard that the owner of this brand is very much into art and hires artists to do the cover of its palettes, and it definitely shows. Beautiful packaging. The next three palettes, beauties, I'm pretty sure are still available, and they're from the same brand, so I'm just going to say them together, but I counted them as different palettes, and they are from Colourpop. Yes, they are Colourpop's monotone greens. So we have High Tide, which is Colourpop's monotones for teals. We have Just My Luck, which is Colourpop's first green monotone. We also have Meant to Be. Meant to Be is very much on the softer pastel-y side. A palette like this with my dark features usually doesn't go. I usually use a palette like this in conjunction with High Tide. Very pastel colors by themselves will wash me out with all of my dark features. But for someone with lighter features, this palette might still be able to work by itself. Part of the reason I decided to do these together, although I consider them a different number. Maybe I should have just considered them the same number, but that's all good. But part of the reason I decided to include them together is because I think these palettes really complement each other. Frankly, the only one that I think you can use by itself is Just My Luck, which is actually the most appropriate for St. Patrick's. I mean, you know, it's the St. Patrick's palette, and this is the color story. You can do different kinds of eye looks with it. Colourpop has also released a whole lot of other 9 pans that have greens in them. Frankly, I felt like they duped these, a combination of these in the newer things that they have released. So they have a lot of 9 pan greens. I might not have them, which is part of the reason I'm not featuring them. But if you have those in your collection, you can also use those. Okay, 5 down. Now we're going into the 6th one. This palette, friends, unfortunately is no longer available. It came back and then it went back out of stock again. But this is Tribe from Juvia's Place. I really like this palette, and although this palette has different colors from green, I consider it a very green tone palette because you can do greenish looks with it. I already mentioned at the beginning, not all of these palettes are going to be monotone. There's no point in talking about all monotone palettes because obviously for St. Patrick's you can go buy a monotone palette. But this palette, if you could get your hands on it, I know they brought it back and I considered purchasing it for a few of my friends who have been looking for this palette, but then it went back out of stock at some point. If you can get your hands on it and you're interested in this color story, I highly recommend Juvia's Place. The pans of these older palettes are a little too large though. I don't think anybody hits pans on these. Different topic, but amazing palette. The next one, Beauties, came out last year and is still available. In fact, recently, this website had a sale. Maybe the sale is still going on when you're watching this. So if you're interested in this palette, you can check out the website. And that is Tropical Vibes from Ace Beauté. This palette is also one of those palettes that's a little bit greeny, a little bit murky, a little bit grungy. Absolutely gorgeous. You can do all kinds of variations of greens, going into olives, going into dark greenish browns. I wish instead of all of these matte olives, there was one color that was more matte of this color. I think that could have come in very handy. Anyway, a different topic, but this palette is another palette that I can see people use for St. Patrick's Day. Okay, Beauties, the next palette is definitely available, but this palette also is not 100% green, although it has a lot of green colors. And that is From Miami to Bahamas from Kara Beauty. I know I talk about a lot of Kara Beauty palettes in this channel because I really like Kara Beauty. I find it pretty reasonably priced. I usually buy these palettes at TJ Maxx, and the quality is very nice. Even if you had just the top 3 rows of this palette, you could have achieved a very, very green look. But of course, you also have some neutrals, and you can maybe do a greenish, neutralish look depending on your interest. Palette number 9 is the palette I did this eye look with, and that is Jungle Roar from J.Cat Beauty. I just bought this palette yesterday and I was thinking to myself, it has a lot of greens. Interestingly, it actually kind of has St. Patrick's green, although the greens are a little bit scattered among other colors. As you can see on my eyes, you can achieve a very green eye look with this palette if you so choose. I can't wait to play around with some of the colorful mattes in this palette. J.Cat Beauty is also pretty affordable. This palette is around $14 on their website right now. Okay, Beauties, palette number 10 is from a brand that recently had a release. But of course, the palette we're going to talk about is from last year. It's actually their first palette, and that is Fantasy Cosmetica's Droid palette. Let's look at all the greens in this palette. Look at this. Yes, I know, again, not exactly St. Patrick's green, but I can imagine not everybody's comfortable with St. Patrick's green, and with a color story like this, you can achieve maybe a darker green look. You can put some of these darker neutral mattes to complement the look if you don't feel comfortable using very green looks like me. I think this palette is super versatile for different people, and it has some very, very nice multichromy, duochromy shades like this one. I absolutely love this color at the center, which is just the shimmer. I'm going to quickly try to swatch this color at the bottom to show you how beautiful and multichromy goodness it is. From my angle, I see purple, but I think you all see green. It's a beautiful color. Okay, Beauties, we're doing the final 4. I know the palette I'm talking about is no longer available, but this brand also does the colors in their palettes as singles, so some of these should be available as singles. or the brand might bring it back. And that is Zealon palette from Glam Shop. I have done a full swatch of this palette, and I believe I might have even done an eye look in this channel with this palette. I've definitely raved about this palette multiple times in this channel. It has gorgeous colors, and friends, this palette was so cheap. Issue with Glam Shop is that because it's delivering from Poland, delivery fees are high. So if you're ordering something from Glam Shop, it doesn't make sense to order just one £9 palette. But I highly recommend the brand. Some of these colors are just absolutely gorgeous. For the affordable price of the palette, it's amazing that this palette has such nice multichromy colors and then also super pigmented matte colors. This palette is definitely a St. Patrick's palette, friends. It even has kind of a shamrocky green color called Florina. I'm actually pretty sure this Florina color is available right now on their website as a single. And we get to the final three. Of course, I could not do this without talking about Avocado Toast from BH Cosmetics. Friends, I recently did a to buy or not to buy where I used this palette. I'll tag it here if you're curious. This palette is a little bit old. It came out a few years ago, but BH Cosmetics recently restocked it. I find this palette very suitable for someone who might want to dabble into greens because, as you can see, unfortunately, the holographic background doesn't allow you to see, but this palette has quite a bit of neutral color, so you can honestly do multiple variations of all neutral looks here. You can even do like all matte neutral looks, you can do neutral shimmery looks, you can do neutral smoky looks. You don't need to even use greens with this palette, but because we're talking about St. Patrick's Day, I'm going to bring your attention to these two greens, which are amazing colors if you want to do bold, bright St. Patrick-y look. Again, as I said, you don't have to do bold, bright St. Patrick-y for St. Patrick's Day. Frankly, you can do any kind of look for St. Patrick's Day, but if you want to use greens at any level, you can use one of the palettes we're talking about today. But this palette, I highly recommend. We're at second to last, and maybe this next palette you can't use by itself because it's all shimmers. Although you can use some of the multichromes in this palette for a one shadow look, and that is Gloss Gods Dancing in the Sky palette. Friends, I have a review of this palette with eye look and swatches and everything. You might not see the green shift like this, but all of these colors have a green shift in them somehow. I'm absolutely loving the whole concept here, and I consider a palette like this that has different kinds of green colors but also shifts of green a monotone palette for 2023. I'm gonna do this to help you see the different variations of these colors. The only issue might be that if you're like me and you don't do all shimmer looks, you might have to dabble into another palette to complement the look with some matte colors. And beauties, we come to the very end, and this is our last but not least palette, and that is Earthy from Beauty Bay. Beauties, I also have a review of this palette. This is a gorgeous palette, and as you can see, you could call this a monotone. You can do all kinds of green looks with this palette. I have a full review of this palette in this channel. I'll tag it here for you if you're interested, so I don't want to talk about everything I've mentioned in that video over again. But I absolutely love this palette. Of course, greens look amazing on me, so I would obviously love palettes like this. But if this is your type of color story, or if you want a palette to use for St. Patrick's Day and you just want to get adventurous and buy an all greens palette, I highly recommend this palette. I have seen it on sale for, I want to say, even $7 on Beauty Bay website. It's still available on the site if you're interested. Highly recommend this palette. And with that, beauties, we come to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Write down to me below what are the green palettes that you like, what green palettes you're considering using for St. Patrick's Day, or generally what palettes you are considering to use for St. Patrick's Day, even if they're not all green, or maybe you want to even do a look that has no greens in it, and that's all totally fine. We're here for fun. So I would love to hear everything you have to say if it's related to St. Patrick's Day eye looks. Thanks again, beauties. I love you all. Have a fantastic day. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already. I wish you all an amazing day. Bye.